Bitcoin maximalist who cherry picks a few data points to try to make a point. I think the US will be fine. I think the dollar will be fine. I don't think it's right to spend this much, but I think that politicians are incapable of cutting expenses, and so I would like to cut their revenues. AMD, Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon don't announce something substantive, there's a very good chance that NVIDIA runs away with this.
Hello and welcome to Crypto Street. In this video we have the privilege of featuring Chamath Palihapitiya, a renowned venture capitalist and CEO of Social Capital. But before we jump into our discussion, let's take a quick look at the recent happenings in the cryptocurrency market. Bitcoin's price has rebounded above $26,000, showing resilience despite the news about Coinbase and Binance legal issues. The bullish sentiment remains intact. In addition, Ethereum's price is on the rise, grabbing traders' attention as it was not included in the SEC's lawsuit against Coinbase and Binance. This positive news has contributed to the upward movement of Ethereum. Now, let's begin our engaging discussion with Chamath.
This is a Bitcoin maximalist who cherry picks a few data points to try to make a point. But if you look at the IMF data, and I put it to you in the group chat, you can't just look at US Treasury securities. You have to look at actual absolute dollar reserves. And when you look at that over time, it hasn't fluctuated that much. And so for all the dopes that don't understand how this shit works, it's not just securities, it's actually also money. And the actual amount of US dollar money hasn't changed that much. I just find this argument, again, one of these long sigma arguments that are anxiety riddled, and I just don't want to waste my time thinking about it because it'll distract me from winning on the field today. The United States is kind of the simplest, safest bet, and that these decisions are made on a relative basis. China, unfortunately for them, has a huge demographic problem that will diminish them economically. And you're already starting to see it, but it's going to get really exacerbated in the next 10 or 15 years. That's just the mathematical reality for a country that has literally zero immigration and no solution. Europe is not in a very great situation. And the only place that's really firing on all cylinders is India, but it has a long way to go to build the infrastructure that can really scale and make it as predictable as the United States. Could it do it? I think so, but it's going to take a long time. That 50, 60, 100 years of investment. So I don't know. I just kind of try to simplify for myself. I think the US will be fine. I think the dollar will be fine. I don't think it's right to spend this much, but I think that politicians are incapable of cutting expenses, and so I would like to cut their revenues.
Bitcoin showed signs of recovery after Wall Street opened on June 6th, despite facing new legal action from US regulators. Earlier in the day, the price dipped to nearly three-month lows of $25,350 following news of the US Securities and Exchange Commission suing Coinbase, the largest crypto exchange in the country. This had a significant impact on the crypto markets. However, despite the lawsuits, the outflows of unregistered securities on Coinbase remained relatively small, according to Ki-Young Ju, CEO of CryptoQuant. Some traders saw this as a reason for renewed optimism. Michael Van de Poppy, founder and CEO of trading firm 8, tweeted that the likelihood of this news actually being the low of the correction has increased substantially. Another trader, Martin, announced a Bitcoin buy-in below $26,000 and expressed confidence. This was evident in the tweet he posted. There are still many potential risks in front of us, like US Gov selling BTC or a potential recession. But I expect the bottom is in, and the price shouldn't trade any lower than $20,000. The only thing I try to do is buy as close to $20,000. And today was the first time it felt good. Trader Mustache emphasized in his tweet that, isn't it amazing that BTC just dropped 6% on the SEC news? This is all just scaremongering before the real upswing for BTC begins. It's inevitable if you asked me. My view from a few weeks ago hasn't changed. Still expect a strong bounce in this region. As we see now, market participants maintained a positive outlook, anticipating a broader resurgence in the future.
I think that when we had ZERP, you probably could have charged a negative interest rate because you would have effectively been charging countries, third world developing countries, even first world countries that just wanted a protective mechanism against their currency volatility. They would have probably paid you. Just like today, you can get BOJ debt that's negative yielding. So it's no longer negative, but it's still probably in the realm of 1.5%. It's nothing. If you just do the math, it's nothing. And this is why I don't understand why everybody just gets their underwear in a bunch here. These guys are banking US dollars like nobody's business. The anchor currency for governments and central banks has been, will be, and will likely be in the future, the United States dollar. And we get back to the circular argument, which is, I don't think it's possible for politicians to cut expenses. So I am just an advocate for cutting revenue, because I do think it's the simplest way to force people. Because the next time they go through these machinations and all this theater around a debt ceiling, they'll just have less revenue to play with. And it'll just become a harder and harder and harder problem. Meanwhile, I do think that you have to take the ball where it lies and take these $24 or $30 trillion and refinance it well out into the future and make a bet on US exceptionalism and US GDP. And if you don't want to believe it, don't fucking be here. Move to some other country where you think it's so much better and go do it there. You have to be able to probably weight these things and then spend your time thinking about the things that are more probabilistic and be able to compartmentalize the anxiety of the less probabilistic things. So I think that, could there be a scenario where there is no interest? Sure. Is there one? No, because you see every day the government's in the market doing auctions, and there is a robust demand for United States government debt. And until there isn't, this argument is specious. And all I would tell you is just keep trying, put out more, try a 45-euro bond and see how it feels like. Try a 50-euro. You don't have to do 100 if it makes you too anxious. It occupies my mind share, which takes away from me figuring out how to make money and win on the field today. So I have,
Let's go.
I wake in a 24-hour day. Okay, just to give you a sense of it, I sleep for 8. I'm eating for another 1 or 2, all this bullshit. I have 4 or 5 hours a day of useful thinking time. And I try to think of the belly of the probable. And I try to compartmentalize these dumb long tail sigma events because it distracts me from making money and winning. I actually try to think about long tail sigma events that could make me money. This isn't one of them. So I just don't spend time thinking about it. And I could be totally wrong.
Can we pull up this chart?
I could be totally wrong.
Can we pull up this
but
chart?
It's worked for me so far, and I'm going to stick to what works.
Guys,
The SEC steers clear of Ethereum for now. On June 6th, Ethereum's native token, Ether, rose nearly 2.25% to around $1,825, compared to its June 5th low at $1,775. The bounce appeared synchronously with a similar move elsewhere in the crypto market. Interestingly, the move accompanied the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's decision not to call Ethereum a security in its lawsuits against Binance and Coinbase. In September 2022, SEC Chairman Gary Gensler said that proof-of-stake tokens like Ether fall under the category of securities per the Howey test. However, his opinion differs from his predecessor William Hinman, who said Ether is not a security in his 2018 speech. Also, in April 2023, Gensler sidestepped questions about Ethereum's status before the U.S. House Financial Services Committee. Ethereum's dominance performance since the SEC lawsuit rose to 20.7% on June 6th, the highest in 9 months.
This is a really important moment where, like, that design, that Grace Hopper design, which is basically a massive system on chip, it's an entire rig. It's a GPU and CPU and memory and interconnects. This is like them going for the jugular. And this is what's crazy in a moment like this. Like, that is basically them trying to create an absolute monopoly. Because if you have these rigs, and these rigs are the most capable for learning, and you have their SDK, CUDA, which is becoming the de facto software layer now that you use to write to their H100s or Grace Hopper when it's available, and the A100s, that could create a level of lock-in that I think people should be thinking about. So if you're the hyperscalers like Amazon and Google and Microsoft, what is your reaction to this? If you're Facebook, what is your reaction to this? And I think it's really important, because if these guys continue to innovate at this scale, you're not going to have any alternatives. And it goes back to like what Intel looked like back in the day, which is an absolute straight up monopoly, except the difference is that even when you wrote something to Intel CPUs, you could actually run it on an AMD processor and it would work with no changes. But that's not necessarily the same. So if you go from an A100 to something else, an FPGA or some other silicon, you have to translate the model. And so it's very important to understand that there's no extensibility here. So like if NVIDIA continues to drive this quickly and continues to execute like this, it's a one and done, one company monopoly in AI at the hardware layer. And I think that people are probably thinking about how to blunt that competitive outcome. But that's what I took away from that announcement from them, which is like they are ready to go for the jugular here in what looks like the most important market. The simple thing about price to equity ratios is if you take the price equity ratio and you invert it, that's your implied yield.
Price to earnings.
Price to earnings, sorry. And you invert it, that's your yield, right? And so NVIDIA is yielding at these prices, I think it's somewhere like 2 to 2.5%, which is less than, and it's almost half of a typical 2-year bond. And so when you have a yield that's low, you have to see it just grow absolutely massively. But there's this principle in capitalism, which is in order to grow like that, you're generating so much profit that competitors look at it and say, hold on, you don't deserve that much profit. I'm going to take some of that.
Your profit's my opportunity. Your margin's my opportunity.
I think that your margin is my opportunity is exactly what happens. So I think what I'm waiting for, Friedberg, is like in the next 2 quarters, if AMD, Facebook, Google,
Intel,
Microsoft, and Amazon don't announce something substantive, there's a very good chance that NVIDIA runs away with this. And I think that that's very problematic. But in that case, that price is cheap. My bet, though, and it's a different version of your bet, but we get to the same outcome, is that I don't think that that's going to happen because it's just too important. And so I think that everybody other than NVIDIA wants vendor diversity, right? You don't want to get locked into one person, one set of hardware,
great, yeah. Or one cloud provider.
One SDK. You don't want that. Nobody wants that except NVIDIA and NVIDIA shareholders. So my bet is in the next 2 quarters, you start to see some real action so that folks start to have to balance their forecasts where it's not just 100% NVIDIA, but it's NVIDIA plus, plus, plus. And that's sort of what I would bet because it just seems like logical and right. Because I otherwise it would be pretty derelict of these hyperscalers to just throw their hands in the air and just give the whole market to them. And it would be derelict of AMD.
The other thing that's happening is,
and AMD is a great memory solution, but they really don't have a deterministic AI chip. And I think that Lisa Su needs to act decisively here and build something, announce something, buy something, but she needs to be really aggressive here.
Ethereum's price has recently experienced a bounce near a significant support level, forming a descending triangle pattern in the long term. Descending triangles are typically seen as bullish continuation patterns within an uptrend. To confirm the pattern, the price needs to break above the falling trendline resistance with strong trading volumes, which could lead to a price increase equivalent to the triangle's maximum height. In this case, Ether's price could potentially rise towards the upper trendline of the triangle, reaching around $1,900. However, if the price manages to surpass the $1,900 resistance level, the recovery trend may extend further to around $2,100, representing a possible 20% rebound in June. It's important to note that descending triangles have sometimes signaled the end of an uptrend, resulting in sharp bearish reversals. Therefore, caution should be exercised when analyzing this pattern. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support and engagement. Your insights on the future direction of the world of cryptocurrencies are highly valued. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content.